Today, by popular request, I'd like to continue our conversations on relationships. And more specifically, I'd like to focus on and emphasize that we already know how we would like our relationships to be and how to see them into existence. What we want to do is listen to ourselves and trust ourselves to a higher degree rather than allowing ourselves to be swayed by the identification to the sea of opinions of what to do or not do in relationships. Now, if any swaying occurs where one might doubt themselves, it's important to be supportive and understanding and speak with ourselves in a loving way to release those doubt-based beliefs that cause the swaying on the journey to realizing the relationships that we desire. I believe in not only having what you want, but getting there on the path of least resistance, as we discussed in Tuesday's video, which I'll link in the description too. So I received a number of messages lately regarding a certain situation. We live in a wonderful time. We have access today to many opinions and many ideas which can be helpful, yet this vast sea of beliefs being shared could lead to overthinking and confusion for the individual if they have not cultivated a healthy relationship with intuition. And so thus, it's not to say that these various opinions and ideas are not helpful. They certainly are. What we want to acknowledge is that some of these opinions may be helpful and related to your vision, your style of ideal relationships, and some not so much. Consider that what may be helpful for one person may not be helpful for another based on their given circumstance. This releases a lot of confusion as to what relationship advice to take from the various sources, which may appear contradictory on the surface. As in, one person said you should do X, and the other person said you should do Y. Well, the answer is it depends. And we benefit from keeping the nuances of our personal experiences, our distinct style, what we consider as ideal relationships, into consideration before we decide. And to further dissolve the confusion, a lot of times I've seen that this is caused by a belief. A person still is identifying with the belief that the answers are found outside, when in actuality, as we've been discussing, they are first found inside, and they may be reflected outside to reveal the answers first found within. If you accept this, you'll deepen the most important relationship, in my opinion, and that is with intuition. I listen exclusively to my intuition. And so what we want to do is exercise our inherent ability to go beyond the limiting past beliefs. Like, for example, the one that says answers in matters of the heart are found outside, within the sea of beliefs that this outer world is made up of. Live from your heart and true inner voice, which reveals what is true for your relationship dilemmas, as in what to do or not do. All answers are found within. And that's what this video is about when it comes to relationships, which is such a personal, sensitive, and nuanced topic. And all the more reason, thus, to go within for the answers. The reality is that you already know what you want, and you already know how to get there. Listen to yourself and trust yourself. So the wonderful thing about this time, although there may seem that there are more opinions than ever before, all of us have reached an interesting point in consciousness, and I've spoken to countless people about this. We have discovered that all answers are actually found within, and even if they appear without, they are first found within and reflected outward. This world is actually a mirror. Consciousness is reality. To emphasize, any five sensory data experienced is given form through imagination. And so the question really is, what are we imagining? As a matter of fact, look at the sea of beliefs that make up this world, and you'll realize that they were first all imagined anyways. So do you want to live from the past, or do you want to live now from how you see yourself ideally in relationship with others? And again, while there are many beliefs reflected outside that are still helpful, there are those that are not so much. They are past limiting beliefs which may seem to be in conflict with how you truly desire your relationships to be, and you do not need to give them any more power. No belief has any power unless we accept it as true. So if in doubt, check within. You already know the way. So simply put, you don't have to believe anything that doesn't sit well in your heart when it comes to relationships. I believe that if the desire exists, then there's a match. I don't believe that someone who lives how they truly desire to live. Certainly it has not been my experience. Beyond the limiting beliefs, cannot have the kind of relationships that they want. The desires of the heart do not go unfulfilled. It's law. As Neville Goddard said, and we discussed this 2 weeks ago, I'll link in the description to the video, to desire a state is to have it. So when it comes to relationships, relating with others is about how we imagine others to be in relationships subconsciously, and thus relationships reflect our beliefs with vivid accuracy. And so if we don't like the way that they play out, no shame or condemnation or being hard on ourselves, you change the concept you hold of yourself, which means the beliefs we hold as true with self-talk or autosuggestion, as I recommend in my Subconscious Mind program. And by you, I mean you are truly formless awareness, and you give form as relationships through subconscious beliefs. Look around. This world is made up of beliefs, whether one is conscious of them or not. And as mentioned, our consciousness is elevated these days, so we know how to discern. And as you do, you bring more awareness to the beliefs once subconsciously identified with. And as you do, if they're not in harmony with how you would like your relationships to be, you release them. Just by bringing them to awareness, you release them. And with respect to relationships, the relationships change. This is law. It happens automatically by the power of your subconscious mind. In other words, we change how we see ourselves inside, how we relate with others, and they show up to mirror those changes. And how do we change these concepts? By accepting ourselves as already in possession of the attributes we desire to have. To desire a state or attributes that make up a state is to already have it. And thus you are what you say I am too. It has been this way since the beginning of time. So a while back I studied NLP modeling, which is essentially observing those who are successfully performing an activity. And I did this for sales and leadership, where I'd study their beliefs that would play out as successful behaviors by observing their behaviors and tracking them back to causative beliefs within by going through a series of questions. These questions were not unpleasantly intrusive, nor was this process confrontational. And through observation of what and how they would say things, they would reveal their beliefs to me, even if they were not aware of them. As a matter of fact, some would deny having certain beliefs. This is because At that time, they were not aware of what was causing them to behave in a certain way. They thought it was luck or chance or some power outside of them. What was interesting was that later on they came back and acknowledged that it was because of a causative belief they were identifying with. And we see this in relationships as well. A person may deny that they are a certain way, only to then bring awareness to a certain belief that they surrendered free will to, and then change it if it was not helpful, which then they would change, and then they would report that their relationships would change. So to simplify the findings for experiencing ideal relationships, there's two parts: releasing the unhelpful beliefs, and number two, the integration of the attributes, ideal attributes, of having ideal relationships. And this is true for personal or business relationships or whatever category you want to apply. These two factors were found to be happening in my observation. So to simplify this, embody an ideal mental state when it comes to relationships, because this is what is causing the effects that I would discover in NLP modeling. For example, I found that those who would embody an ideal state, let's say we would call it an attractive state, would behave a certain way, talk a certain way, and say things in a certain way. And one may conclude that they too, if they behave that way, talk that way, and say things that certain way, would have the same effect. And I found this was a hit and miss kind of approach. What was more powerful was to enter into the mental state of the individual, which we could call attractive state. And each person knows what that state is based on how they feel. And as they remain in that state, they would then authentically express that state in their own way, which may or may not include the same behavior of the other. However, the results would be ideal. This was far more effective, as it was also experienced as authentic, and there wouldn't be any side effects by copying what, for example, the other person said. Side effects of copying could include, let's say, if the person said what the other person said to another person, the other person responded in an unexpected way, and then they wouldn't know how to respond to that. That's because they're focusing on the words, the behaviors, the actions, rather than operating from an ideal mental state in which all of those things happen automatically, including the releasing of the unhelpful beliefs and the integration of the attributes ideal to having ideal relationships. I like the way William Walker Atkinson said it, and I brought it up many times. He said, "The best suggestionists are those who have acquired the suggestive manner, which is developed by the exercise of authoritative utterances and commands, the physical appearance, manner, and tones arising from a reflection of the mental state within." So what we want to do is enter into and remain in an ideal state in which one could say they feel attractive, harmonious, comfortable, complete inside, have everything inside, comfortable with who they are, and remain in it till it becomes a natural way of being, which is their natural way of being. So we could say re-become a natural way of being. The ideal relationships will manifest automatically to reflect that authenticity. And the words, physical appearance, manner, and tones arising, as he said, will arise naturally and perhaps distinctly, happens automatically from within. And going back to the beginning, they will think for themselves, listen to themselves, and know what to do and not do, and they'll notice that they do those things or not do those things automatically, as all those attributes arise naturally from the ideal mental state within. Now, the way we enter into the state is through autosuggestion, handcrafted statements of intention, self-talk that imply that you are already the person you desire to be, which will reflect as ideal relationships as your beliefs have changed. And as they do, so do your relationships to reflect. As it is stated in the Bible, as you believe, so it shall be done unto you. So again, this does two things. Number one, releases the unhelpful beliefs. And number two, the integration of the ideal attributes, which reflect as ideal relationships. And I also recommend building this relationship with yourself and intuition by being aware if you are perhaps allowing yourself to sway from this authenticity by guarding the gates of the subconscious. To do this, William Walker Atkinson did a great job categorizing how we cause ourselves to believe ideas that are not helpful. And as mentioned, while those ideas may be helpful for others, we want to check in with ourselves to see if these ideas are helpful to us and how we personally would like our relationships to be. First, we have the suggestion of authority. He says, suggestion of authority manifests both in the positive authoritative statements directed to the point and also by the spoken or written statements made by those who speak or write with an air of authority. So we want to be aware of what we are perceiving, what the world seems to be suggesting that seems to override our intuition. Remember, that's just how it may appear. The reality is, what others suggest has no real suggestive power until we assign that power. So we're the ones inside assigning the power. And to discern, always remember, while those who are perceived as authoritative may be helpful, perhaps not everything in relation to your specific scenario, circumstances, with respect to your style of relationship, how you truly desire to be. The answer is, it depends. And you find it within yourself. By listening to yourself and trusting yourself, you'll know. There's only one authority. You are the suggester and suggestee inside in relation to the five sensory experience, as well as the sixth sense of imagination. You choose what you want to believe and accept as true. Next, we have the suggestion of association. He says, it's very easy for us to associate certain things with other things. And we will find that when one of the things is recalled, it will bring with it its associated impressions. So in relation to our conversation, for example, if one had inharmonious relationships in the past, they may believe a blanket statement like, all relationships are inharmonious. The reality is, relationships are how they believe they are, and they play out automatically. So if they experienced it a certain way, they don't have to repeat that cycle. These cycles, either oriented from the past or through accepting our own suggestions, happen automatically based on subconscious beliefs. So the question really is, from now, how do they want it to be? Do they want to live from the past or live from now as ideal relationships? And as they do, they will see it happen. Then we have the suggestion of habit. He says, of course, all habit is an association with something in the past. But suggestion of habit may arise from an original cause of suggestion of authority, association, repetition, imitation, or else from an original decision of the intellect resulting from correct reasoning. The former act or thought acts as a suggestive outside influence, although it belongs to one's own mentality. So what he's saying here essentially is to not perpetuate the habits of the past, the beliefs of the past, if they are not desirable. All power is now to form whatever habits you want, which, as he puts it in quotes, outside influence, and then says it belongs to one's own mentality. This is about 100% responsibility. And this doesn't mean you have to do all this hard work if you assume 100% responsibility. The work is done automatically for you by the subconscious mind. You simply accept that reality works in relationships the way you say it does, and it happens from the heart and intuition. And it may reflect synchronistically as answers revealed outside. They are the reflections, if you allow yourself to find the precise, unique, distinct answers in relation to your vision inside. You will listen to them, trust them, and those will become your habitual ways of being. So you have the choice. Thus, you have all the power. And again, everything happens automatically from the premise of whatever you accept as true. Then we have suggestion of repetition. He says, the suggestion of repetition. It is the constant dripping of water wearing away the stone. A suggestion which passes you without much attention or consideration when first made will gain both attention and consideration from you if it be repeated sufficiently often and in the right manner. So much like the suggestion of habit, we see certain information in the world repeated on the internet, movies, media. No matter how much it shows up, if it doesn't resonate, you don't have to accept it as true. I suggest repeating your own autosuggestions and engaging in information that encourages how you would like your relationships and life to be ideally. And then you'll recalibrate to the ability to be wherever and not have inharmonious information sway you. It will no longer polarize you because you no longer allow it to happen inside. Finally, we have the suggestion of imitation. He says, this form of suggestion, while being in itself a distinct phase of suggestion, nevertheless has a very close relationship with the several other forms of suggestion. Philosophies, theories, schools of thought, and branches of religious denomination are accepted because they are fashionable. So, this is where a person looks around to see what others are doing and forming conclusions of how they should be. This is similar to groupthink or social proof in Robert Cialdini's book, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion. This can be unhelpful in relationships where some might look at statistics of what others are saying rather than seeing themselves as an exception to the rule if in their heart what they want does not seem to fall within a groupthink or seemingly common narrative. And I say seeming common narrative because the reality is that actually, as we've been discussing today, as you think for yourself, listen to yourself, and trust yourself, you'll find yourself surrounded by people who are authentically, ideally in relationship, whatever shape or form, based on how you truly are. As I applied what is being discussed here, everywhere I go, I meet people like I am, authentically. And that's because people show up by how you imagine them to show up. So imagine the relationships you truly desire. You know what that means for you. You already know what you want, and you already know how to get there. Everything happens automatically for you by what you believe to be true. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, I know what I want, and I know how to get there. Every day, in increasing frequency, I listen to myself and trust myself. Listening to my intuition exclusively beyond opinions, as I have vivid clarity, which reveals all that is ideal and true to me inside, which reflects outside as ideal, harmonious relationships of love and harmony, the reflections of how I desire to be now. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.